Good morning. I will now call the Monday, May 15th Town Council meeting to order. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, up first on the agenda is the approval of the memorandum of the May 1st, 2023 regular Town Council meeting. A copy has been posted. Are there any questions from councilors?
I'll make a motion to approve.
First by Councilor Garrett.
Second.
Second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is the approval of the April 17th, 2023 claims. Are there questions from councilors?
These have all been paid already.
You'll recall these are the claims that have been paid already. And I guess as I look through these, I did have a couple of questions, Cindy. Maybe some of them are just procedural. You know, as you look through these, some of them are pretty important. You know, the AEDs that were purchased. You know, some of the. I did notice those were listed twice in here, Cindy. That was one thing I was going to ask you about.
I believe there was some that were for fire and some for police.
Okay, but the same, so they were just paid for with the same check?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess the biggest question I would have is, obviously these have been paid. What if we find something we don't want paid? What's the process to claw back something that's been paid for a month?
Well, basically, we would just have to go back to the vendor and see if we could get a refund for the item until whatever issue there is resolved.
Okay.
Depends on if they're a regular provider or not.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a possibility of holding a payment going forward until we get resolution with whatever the issue is.
So let me ask you, I know there's a lot of change, a lot of software changes that we're all implementing. I've talked to some counselors who served, 8-10 years ago, and they said that, this is this isn't new. This is just a software problem. We've always paid claims ahead of time before the council had a chance to approve those. Do you have any thought on, is that just going to be standard operating procedure moving forward? Or
There are some that by it's a resolution, I can't remember if it was a resolution or ordinance, it's 2018, I think -3, that we do have the ability to pay some ahead of time. Utilities, prepay items like insurance premiums, payrolls. So just to name a few. So there are some things that they still come on a register to be approved, but we can cut the check prior because there might be some timing issues of waiting for a meeting. This particular one, it was just a new staff error, and we've put in additional checks and balances to make sure that something like this doesn't happen. But it was basically just a learning. It was, a new person that was doing it. And of course, we use it as a learning tool.
Thanks, Cindy.
Can you describe what the checks and balances are that were put in place?
Yes. So once the register is polled, because we prepare it approximately a week in advance or a week and a half in advance of the meeting. So when the register is polled now, Mia, my deputy, goes through everything to make sure that everything from the batches that need to go for the meeting are on there. And then I usually review it as well, but Mia is the first checkpoint. And then everything goes to the department heads and the admins to make sure that everything on there is how they need it to be as well.
I know we had this discussion back in March about putting something in place because it had happened at that point, and then it happened again. So I'm just I don't know. I'm disappointed, I guess.
So we did put in place procedures that don't allow the EFT transactions to go out immediately. Those are like a 2 or 3 day post council approval, correct? I mean, that's not an immediate. we just didn't
Correct.
address
And
the check
unless it
situation.
falls on that prepay list, no, those will wait to make sure that the council approves it.
Okay. I don't feel good about these having been paid already, but going through the claims, it seems like there were claims that would be paid regardless. I think the bigger concern for me is, as Councilor Traylor mentioned, just the repetitive nature of it. So. Any other questions from councilors for Cindy? Otherwise, I would take a motion.
Motion to approve.
First by Councilor Melton,
Second.
second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Cindy, let's do a roll call.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, unless we're clear on that was 4-2. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, President Plunkett,
Yes.
Vice President Burke,
Yes.
sorry, Counselor Culp,
Yes.
Counselor Garrett,
No.
Counselor Melton,
Yes.
Counselor Traylor.
No.
Thank you.
Motion passes 4 in favor, 2 opposed. Up next is the approval of the May 15th, 2023 claims. Cindy, I had questions on on these claims, just clarification, really. And this is page 14. It says subtotal department, or I'm sorry, Department 999. And there are 3. There's payment to Barnes and Thornburg, Ice Miller, and Nooning and Witsit. And I know we've asked multiple times about the Ice Miller claim. Just in the last 2 sets of claims, if this gets approved, we would have paid them over $8,100 for professional services. Is that still the Ice America
Yes, it
lawsuit
is.
that's going on?
Yes.
Okay. And then the board matters for Nooning and Witsit. Do we know what board that is?
That one I'll have to look up and let you know.
I mean, I know that they work on the Parks Board, but I believe that would be a Parks Board budget item, right?
Right. It wouldn't have been Parks Board, but I'll need to look. I don't want to answer until I find out for sure what it was for.
I'd like to have that removed until we get that answer.
Okay.
Any other questions for Cindy?
Yeah, give me just a second. I'm looking for the,
Well, you're looking, there's a bunch of check dates on here.
Hmm.
Have those all been paid too?
Yes, most of those are utilities and payrolls. And let me see here. And some credit card. Yeah, so most of those are the accounts that fall under the resolution for prepay.
All of these? There's hundreds of them.
Well, we've got 2 payrolls in there, which are prepays, and those payrolls show double in here because they show coming out of the budget, and then they show coming out of the payroll account as well. So that's always doubled. So that's going to be the majority of them are the payrolls, but then also, when you've got your utilities, your Boone REMCs, your Dukes and Citizens and so forth. Those are all prepays. And just remember too, that since we didn't do claims at the last meeting, this is like 2 meetings worth of claims. So looks like a lot more than what would normally be on there.
I mean, this seems to be a lot more than just payroll and utilities. As I'm sort of, I mean, I get there's a lot of payroll, but there's like, are all the P card stuff prepaid?
Yes. Well, we try, it does, the payment is made automatically at the end of the month. April, since we didn't have any of the May 1st claims go through, it's showing the April ones, but we are now in the process. We're getting them in prior to the payment being pulled. So like all of the payment gets pulled on the 25th of each month. And
So, and this is not a question for you, Cindy. This is a philosophical question. I don't even understand why we do claims anymore. Like they just seem to all get, if everything on a P card is paid, if things are getting like, I don't understand what's like, we're just wasting time. This is frustrating. Like this has been 4 years of frustration. Stuff gets renovated. We don't approve it. Stuff gets paid and we don't approve it. You can put anything on a P card, it gets auto paid. Like there is no check and balance anymore. This council has no point in this anymore. Like I'm just frustrated. I don't get the point. And that's a rhetorical question. I don't need an answer, but I don't know what we're doing here.
Can I ask about, there's 2 or 3 different rights expressed in here from, there's one from January that shows a check paid date in January, one that shows a check paid date in February. Why are those showing up now?
it's possible that just with the transition of new employees and training, et cetera, that those were just processed. Those types of things we're actually getting caught up on now that we've got a full staff, and they should appear on here on a regular basis.
But they would have been paid, right? Is that? If
That
they've
is-
got a check date from back in January and one in February, it's been paid.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that is our fuel card program.
Cindy, this may be something we could talk about in a follow-up, or just something for you to not necessarily answer off the top of your head unless you've been thinking about it. Now that you're been a couple months in your new role, you had a lot to unpack and get organized. There have been questions for, a number of years about P cards. Even the State Board of Accounts thought that there were some changes we might want to make it to P cards. Have we made any changes in the last 6 months to how we handle our P card process? And are there anything you're thinking about changing, or is that something that you would be willing to look at to see if there are changes that we should be making with P cards?
Actually, that's something that we'll be looking at. The last few months has really been a push on reconciling the year end, working on the transition into the financial software. So a list has been started of processes and so forth that need to be looked at again.
Yeah, thank you for that. Keep us apprised, and maybe even if there's a way for you to solicit some thoughts
Sure.
from some of the folks on this body,
Sure.
might have some ideas for you.
Cindy, I have a quick question with the Amazon purchases. We're seeing just a ton of Amazon purchases on here. How are those submitted to you guys? Is there a paper receipt that they print off of and then it's submitted to you? Is it, I just see lots of P cards being used for Amazon. So I just want to understand better how those are documented and registered with you.
Order confirmations are used that are itemized, and those come with what we call an APV form, which is an accounts payable voucher that's completed with the line item numbers that's to be paid out of, and the department heads have to sign off on those prior to them coming to us.
So are those personal Amazon accounts, or are they a business account?
It's a town business
Town
account.
business account.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Set up, tax exempt, et cetera.
Cindy, the last two questions for me. This Aaron
Sure.
Corporation, we've got 4 payments going out to them, the same amount. Does that, I know at one point we were talking about finalizing that. Does that mean, are we done with this one? This is the basically first third of the year.
Right. No, there'll be an additional appropriation coming because when we budgeted for the Aaron Court payoff, we didn't take into consideration closing costs, et cetera, that are coming through. So those were just regular monthly payments that we made. And then, like I said, there'll be an additional appropriation. I believe it's a not to exceed 15,000 just to cover closing costs, et cetera. And once that's put through, then we'll close on that and pay it completely off.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Cindy?
No, but again, my frustration, I just want to point out, this is $5.3 million in claims on this one form.
I do want to point out, and I understand your frustration, but that is a couple of payrolls that are doubled.
I understand, but this is a macro frustration, not with this, like, there are supposed to be processes where we go through, we
Right.
set a budget, we all live within the budget, and spending within the budget is controlled by the council. Seems like we're setting budgets, but then in the past, they're just getting spent willy-nilly, and then stuff comes through and it's already been paid. So like, it's just, there is no check and balance right now.
I have one other question. I just was looking on here and I saw Earth and Turf LLC and it says mowing the town hall, $1,172. My question is for that, if anybody knows, when they mow, are they mowing just this area or are they mowing the piece of real estate that's out further? I thought that piece of real estate was owned by the RDC, and I could be wrong on that. And I'm not sure on that, but I just didn't know if that's included. Are we paying to mow real estate that the RDC owns, or does the RDC pay for that directly?
I
They
would
their
have
own
to
budget,
check.
I believe.
Yeah, I would have to check on that. I'm honestly not sure if they mow that up there or not. My assumption would be they do, but I would have to
That would
check
make
on that.
the most sense that for the cost. I just was
Sure.
curious if there was a separation of that or not because of their new budget.
Anything else for Cindy?
It's for the whole town hall campus.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to approve claims with the removal of the Department 999 APV number 1423 to Noonan and Whitsett for $2,730.
Second.
Second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes 4 in favor, 2 opposed.
And just to be clear, I don't want to make the impression that this is going to be the trend going forward, that I'll be voting no on claims from here on out. It's just, I will want them to be cleaned up and accurate to vote yes.
All right, up next is a request to speak on agenda item. I have one request to speak. Amy, do we have any more?
No, just the one.
All right, up for request to speak would be Denise Mackler. Good morning, Denise. If you would, when you come up, just state your name and address, and whenever Joe gives me the thumbs up, we'll start your 3-minute clock.
Okay. My name is Denise Mackler. I live at 8795 Flagstone Drive in Rockbridge.
Thank you. I believe Joe has your slides. Is that right? Denise, after you go for 2 minutes, I'll just hold up a hand so you know you got 1 minute left. All right.
Ready?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. In the fall of 2021, a citizen's petition was issued because of concerns with increased accidents in the area. The town and county responded very quickly within a month with a traffic study and updated the signage and trimmed trees in the area. And for that, we are grateful.
Thanks.
Okay, since then, however, there has been a significant amount of growth in the area with no corresponding infrastructure changes at that intersection. And you can see the amount of additional growth in the area. Because of that growth, there has been increased amount of traffic and severity and number of accidents. You can see these accidents are not simple fender benders that we see throughout the town. This is one from March 2022. And more recently from April 2023. I just want to take a look at that. We've been very fortunate that none of our members of our community were injured seriously or even killed. This one really sticks in my mind as it was a neighbor's teenage son who was driving according to the law through 875. Within 8 days, there were 3 serious accidents last month. The causes of these accidents are twofold. We cannot ignore either human factors or street design. They're interrelated, as inadequate street design can increase the chance of human error. The human factors include confusion, inattention, distraction, impatience, and misjudging the opposing traffic intentions. Other factors include 875 drivers either excessively speeding or slowing down because of fear of having an accident in that area. As you can see, it's created what we call a vicious cycle. The concern of accidents in the area can cause drivers to slow down, causing increased confusion of drivers on the 400 South Lakes. So it basically repeats the cycle. Street design includes higher speeds in the area compared to other streets with similar traffic, obstructed visibility, intersection inconsistencies. This is the only 2-way stop surrounded by a bunch of 4-way stops, adding to confusion. Current view of the west leg, you can see the utility boxes, which blocks the view of some drivers. East leg, the utility pole is still blocking one of the stop signs. Additional hazards includes a lot of extra traffic, school buses, farm equipment, cyclists, runners, pedestrians, dog park traffic, and some dangerous utility poles and drainage culvert with some unusual slabs thrown in the ditch there. Recommendations: reduce speeds, improve visibility, expedite roundabout plan. And some other devices that are pretty inexpensive, considering stop sign spinners, better yet, a blinking LED solar powered stop sign, rumble strips, possibly a raised crosswalk and moving the stop bar, and addressing human factors, which would involve public service announcements, extra patrolling, and ticketing. Thank you.
Perfect timing.
Yeah,
I stay up here?
thanks.
Stay up
Denise.
here.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thank you for bringing this to the attention of the council too. All right, up next is the mayor administration update. And we did not receive a mayor administration update, so we'll move on to the town council update. I wanted to give a quick update to this council regarding 2 lingering matters. This Friday, I'm scheduled to meet with all parties regarding the fire chief's legal claim. I'll certainly update everybody as that is appropriate. And following our last meeting, which kind of goes hand in glove with some of the things we've talked about here, Heather and I met again with Baker Tilly. In that meeting, we discussed our concerns around a lack of internal controls, claims being paid without approval, and lack of fund balances. They forwarded me an engagement letter that I will be forwarding to the mayor this afternoon. The scope of their work will be to potentially help staff if needed, the staffing shortages in the finance department, help to develop and implement internal controls and work with the town as a whole as we continue our desired transition from our previous software system to the new system. Baker Tilly is intimately familiar with both systems and feel like they are uniquely positioned to help us at this particular time. We've heard over and over again from this mayor and this administration that everything's fine, and these issues continue. So just want to give the council an update. I'll be forwarding that to the mayor's office this afternoon.
Has the mayor given any indication that she's going to sign the engagement?
I have no indication that the mayor will sign it, but I want to make sure everybody here knows that it will be sent to her. And that will be certainly, obviously, public record. So that will be on her desk this afternoon.
Mr. President, is there a budgetary impact on this agreement?
It will require an additional appropriation, which we can pay for as a professional service. Assuming that, we get everything figured out. So
Well, I certainly hope she signs it.
I do too. Anything else from council? Up next would be old business discussion. This is a consideration of an ordinance creating Fund 276 for Ready Grant funds. This is an ordinance 2023-12. This is a second reading. We've got Lance down here to present if needed. I believe this is just simply opening up the account to receive the Ready Grant money, as we talked about last time. So are there any questions from counselors? I would make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-12. Second by Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is a new business item. This is item A, 875 East, 400 South discussion. Lance, we have you up for this one as well. And this is a follow-up to Denise's presentation earlier.
Hello and good morning. Since you have this on your agenda as a discussion, I will try and withhold going too in depth on matters and let this kind of be a dialogue driven by your questions. And however you see fit. I would point out that County Road 400 South has been serving as a detour from County Road 300 South. And if you're familiar with our network, obviously 300 is a fairly major county road running east-west. So a lot of traffic has been diverted. That being said, an intersection should be set up and signed and communicated clearly so that if you're unfamiliar with the area, you should still have no question on what you should do. I have read through, or the crash reports I say I should have read through. It's not all of them. I haven't put my hands on probably 2 or 3 of the most recent, but every officer statement that I've read indicates that people are coming to a stop on 400 East and West, but then making either poor or ill-informed decisions and pulling on into traffic. With this recent uptick, largely probably due to the additional traffic from the detour. Of course, we've had some discussions with Boone County Highway. They share the north leg of this intersection, but I think we're all of a like mind. We all want a safe and efficient transportation system. So we collaborate with our peers fairly regularly. I did consult with LTAP, who is the state agency that conducted the first safety audit back in 2021, which has been provided to you. And there's been a lot of peer back and forth with no clear emerging solutions at getting at the specifics of the lack of information or what's going on with these drivers, right? You had a very nice presentation this morning, was very comprehensive and had some good ideas for some mitigation strategies that each kind of get at what may or may not be lacking. We have added signage with that detour went in place. It takes us a little bit of time. We stock relatively common signs in our street division, but we don't stock everything. So it could take us a few weeks. But now on each approach of 400 South, the east and west approaches, we are paired stop signs on each side of the road, each with a cross traffic does not stop. And in advance of that are 2 stop ahead signs, each with a cross traffic does not stop. So that's 4 opportunities to learn what the conditions are as you approach from either the east or west. I'll just, I'm not opposed at all to an additional stop sign. As I've told this council repeatedly, I do support data-driven scientific decisions. There is nothing worse than frustrated drivers because they don't understand something. You've heard me say that typically the approach to setting speed limits is capturing the 85th percentile. When people see or encounter something that doesn't make sense, their behaviors don't change. And in fact, they kind of tend to do the opposite. So as we go through this discussion, we can kind of conclude with some my recommendations if you like, but I'll take some direction from you and I'll now entertain anything you might want to ask me or comment or I can sit down. That's fine. You can have your conversation.
Lance, do we have a timeline for the completion of 300?
The detour is over.
Okay.
That culvert project has concluded.
Okay. So when, after we spoke a couple weeks ago, I went out to the intersection and spent maybe 10, 15 minutes out there looking at, taking pictures of different things. And I got a lot of the similar pictures that Denise put out there. As you address that stop sign from the west headed east,
Mhm.
I witnessed two things there. Well, three things. Actually, I watched somebody not stop at all.
It happens.
I watched somebody stop, then come up to the road again and stop because there's a pretty big gap between the stop sign and the road. And then I watched somebody stop at the stop sign and go all the way through. So as Denise mentioned, and you've mentioned, obviously there could be a little bit of confusion there. I agree. The utility boxes seem to be a little bit difficult to see around. So I guess I just wanted to throw what I saw. I don't travel that road every day. But when this came up, I certainly wanted to go up there and see it. And I spoke with Counselor Traylor a little bit after the last meeting, and I don't know what exactly the changes should be, but I think we need to figure something out there.
Well,
And
interesting.
also sensitive to the fact that we're shutting down Oak Street in less than 30 days for 90 days.
Yeah, interesting that you bring up the distance of the stop bar, which is set further back from the intersection in advance of the pathway intersection, the crosswalk, which is where it should be appropriately. And one of the first thoughts, one of the comments from LTAP was, hey, that's pretty far back. And I said, agreed, we could look to bend that pathway slightly to the east, closer to the intersection. So the people would be, that first stop situation is closer to the intersection. And LTAP thought, that was a logical solution, but then they had an opportunity to then come back and drive through. And they said, actually kind of where it is gives you the best sight lines, both north and south. So, I liken this to law, right? If law was crystal clear, we wouldn't need attorneys. There is interpretation in every discipline, right? And there are varying opinions amongst professionals. I had an opportunity, of course, in some of my peer research talking, I called an engineer who used to be the city engineer for Noblesville and is now with our town consulting firm. And I said, hey, have you ever implemented stop conditions because of a crash history? And he had done that twice in Noblesville on a much busier road, but those all had sight lines. They had buildings blocking the approaching traffic. The other professional engineering company I talked to, who's done a lot of, you would recognize the initials if you saw them, done a lot of studies, a lot of work for the town. They had not encountered that in the history of their firm. So, it's there are matters of opinion, absolutely, on where is the optimal point. Of course, you can try to mitigate, but you can never fully mitigate the human factor, right? We all know you come to a stop at the stop sign. If you can't see, or you can't, you may come to a second stop. And LTAP had made another suggestion to add another sign right at the intersection that is called basically says look again with arrows each way. Now that is not included in the standard MUTCD signs. That's our sign Bible. It tells you what's the right sign and where's the right location to use it. But there are provisions for unique signage within the MUTCD. Look, you've got a weird situation, something's wonky, come up with a reasonable sign solution. So just kind of just mainly to let you know that we do collaborate with our peers of what have you guys done in the past? And, the common theory or the common story across the board is, oh yeah, we had an intersection, went crazy for a summer, then it never happened again. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying we need to assume that's going to happen. But again, unique situations, you have a broad range of experiences.
Lance, I've always had confidence in the job you do, still have confidence in the job you do. In the 8 years of council, when these have come up, I think we as a council have been very careful to make sure any changes we make are best practice data driven, not, they may be driven by a neighbor concern, but not because of the neighbor concern, because you just open up the world of, I want a stop sign here, a yield, like it just becomes unmanageable. Do you have a recommendation or do you need more time to make a recommendation? I mean, I don't know anything about what's safe and what's not safe. And I don't feel me saying you should put a flashing stop sign there is going to make it safer or less safe. I look to you to say, based on the data, this is what we should do. Are we to that point yet?
The efficacy of certain strategies that were mentioned are still, a matter of opinion among those that I've talked with. My recommendation is to engage, and I would recommend our town engineer be long enough to conduct a safety audit, engineering study of the intersection. And that's twofold. One is we don't have the time right now to engage this process to the depth that it should be. The other thing is that they have the staff that I mentioned earlier, who is a former municipal city engineer. So he brings in more than just traffic engineering, but really an implementation, historical perspective. And the third reason is that to the point I think you were trying to make or alluding to is we got to watch out for liability, right? We have a situation and we should talk about it. We should find ways to improve this situation. When you introduce another four-way stop situation, you're kind of predicating the solution that people are going to pay attention and do what signs say, and that they're not going to just blow off the new stop sign or not be aware or drive on autopilot. So by engaging a third party to do an assessment, safety audit, engineering study, call it what you will, that gives an unbiased, there's certainly probably the perception that we have our opinions formulated. You may have your opinions formulated. This third party's or second party would be a neutral presence into the solution. And also, again, going to that liability issue right after we focus on a safe and efficient transportation system, we want to make sure we don't get sued, and we position ourselves with the best practices and the most justifications to make a radical change like this. So that would be my recommendation, is to engage our town engineer, task them with doing an analysis. And I had mentioned a couple of meetings ago that with detours and everything else kind of changing in the area, that we might get skewed data. Well, I really think that that's not necessary, because the number one driver, in my opinion, is volume, right? In looking at the volumes of the main line and the cross traffic, it's not even close. So capturing traffic volumes right now is not really necessary. Is that my 3 minutes? I know I've gone way 3 minutes. No, I've gone way over 3 minutes. So capturing traffic data as far as volumes go is not really going to be an influential factor. We have data counts before we can use. So updating those, I don't think really necessarily changes the picture. This is more of a safety audit. This is more of a global thing, a global approach, rather than just looking at volumes of cars.
And two quick follow-ups to that. One is that safety audit is different than what was represented in the presentation, the traffic study that was done in 2021.
So LTAP did what I would call that more of a safety audit with a light traffic study. This would be a more comprehensive, perhaps look at the entire corridor. You've heard me talk about, speeds. Are speeds appropriate? One of the suggestions was extending the school zone. I don't support that, but is there a justification with the park, with the presence? But remember, if you tell people you want them to drive 25 and it doesn't make sense to them, they're not going to.
Yeah. And then we share this intersection with the county. Is that something we have to coordinate with them? Is that something they'll help pay for? I know I probably already know the second answer to that.
So Nick Parr, our county highway supervisor, is in the audience, and I don't know whether he wants to remain seated or wants to justify his trip down here and actually come up and contribute to the conversation. We had some early conversations about doing a joint study. Certainly either agency could take on this uniquely without the permission of the other. There's no permission needed to take on a safety study. And to the extent that they'd be willing to participate, I would think this could be accomplished in, $10,000 to $15,000 maximum, depending on the scope of what we look at. But since he's up here, ladies and gentlemen, Nick Parr.
Nick Parr, Boone County Highway Department. Yeah, we've coordinated with them, the town, on previous projects, and we have one leg, like has been mentioned. We've already discussed at a county commissioners meeting recently, after the issues started coming to light, that, we would be in support of some kind of MOU to work with the town to, fund, 25% of the study or whatever it was, because we have, one leg of the intersection. So we definitely see that the concerns and the issues that have been brought up, and we want to support and be part of the conversation, because any regulatory control that would happen on our leg would have to come from the county commissioners. So that would be speeds or changing that to a stop on the southbound leg at 400. So we're in support of the town and looking into this issue.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
So just real quick, Nick, just to be clear, you just said right there that southbound leg would have to have coordination from commissioners. And theoretically, if we said we want to put a four-way stop there, we can't put a four-way stop there anyway. Because you guys would have to approve that southbound.
Correct. The southbound leg would require if a speed limit change or stop sign change at the southbound leg on
Okay.
875.
Did hear you'd pay 25%. So thanks, Nick.
It's a matter of record.
Yeah. Oh, what's the timing on something? I mean, I know it depends on when they can get to it as well, but I mean, do you have a ballpark idea of?
I think, the last study we did was just solely a speed study and it was about a month. I would say probably 2 months, depending again on what all they want to capture. How long they look, how long, I think speed data, regardless of volume, speed data would be accurate. However many cars there are is not going to affect really how fast they are and people driving what they drive. So I would say, 45, 60 days.
And I know this is not something you need to answer, but just stating it out loud so people understand that if we put something in place in the interim, that would skew the study, obviously.
We don't want to artificially influence any data collection processes.
Are there currently stop ahead signs there? I know there's signs that say two-way stop and so forth, but are there signs that say stop ahead?
Yes, there are 2 in each direction.
Okay, great.
Speaking of timing, do you have this in your budget? If the recommendation of this council?
Well, I
goes
think
forward,
it
we have
depends
to
on
add an
what
appropriation?
ultimately what the cost is.
Yeah.
And I would expect that we could absorb this into our general engineering line, but I'm going to throw back death by 1,000 cuts back at you. One little thing, we can probably absorb this. If we get a couple more, then
Yeah.
I have to come back and say, but I'm going to tell you at this point, we can probably readily accommodate this in the approved budget.
At least 75% of it.
No more.
Thanks, Nick.
Finally committed to 25%.
No, I know.
Yeah, depends on what it is. Lance, I've heard you talk about, obviously need to do the safety study. I think we're all in agreement that we should do something and we need to be data driven in this particular situation, although there is data. I mean, we can see the data. I mean, there's increased accidents. And granted, is that just a blip in this spring? I don't know. But there is a lot of different traffic and a lot of different people moving through that intersection that normally don't. And they're going to continue to move through that intersection as we close Oak. I've heard you suggest maybe in the past that we wait until some of the detours are over to do the traffic study. Are you suggesting maybe we do it even now while the detour is going on?
Yes, because that's what I was trying to get at with the one piece of data that's a couple of years old is the volumes, both on the cross street and the main line. But I don't think based on where I've seen the volumes in our most recent data, that traffic has increased to a degree that would become a factor. So we're not going to get a stops condition based on more cars through there. So you eliminate that, then everything else, even though it's maybe a detour route, is a fairly static condition.
And you think we could probably get this safety study done in the next 45 to 90 days?
I think so.
When will the Oak Street change begin to really escalate traffic?
June 5th.
So it's going to be well before the study.
Yes.
In the interim, and I know this would impact the study, so this is the catch-22 in my mind that I got to think through. Again, it's not my decision, it's yours, it's professional and or engaging professionals to help us. It seems that some kind of flashing mechanism may be helpful. And again, just as a lay person, and I've been out there as well, I went out a couple of weeks ago just to look at it. And I didn't have access to the records that you have. So it's interesting for you to say, and looking at the police records, almost everybody did stop and then moved out into a pretty darn busy intersection. So either they're moving way quicker. And I noticed this as well. I get that the line of sight on the stop sign is best to have it back. But if people stop it somehow where the sign might normally be, maybe you're not itching up as much as you're making a different peripheral judgment in how far you have to move if your car is at a dead stop and you're 10, 15 feet back from where you would normally. There's just something odd going on at this particular stop because people just don't lose their minds. So there's something that's a judgment question of not being able to judge the traffic accurately. So I do think more than anything, myself included, as I already knew the history of this intersection was, I'm going to be super cautious here. But not everybody knows that. So I don't have an answer other than, we're going to have a lot more traffic in this area. We've seen some increased accidents. The last thing we want are more accidents or an accident with severe injury or death. Is there something we can do to prevent that? I don't know. Well, I get that if you put a flashing light up, you're skewing to some degree the safety study. But on the other hand, is it best to put something up and hold off on the study? I don't know, but I'm just pointing out that I am concerned about this increased Oak Street traffic that's going to drive. And I appreciate that we're doing a study, and, hope and a prayer is not the best thing to say up here, that something doesn't happen while we're studying the incident or studying that intersection. So I would be in favor, I think, of something else to draw some attention to this. And I know that may skew the data. So just my thoughts. Obviously, you need to engage the professionals and see what they have to say, but I am worried about it. And I've had a number of people reach out on this issue, probably at least 20 or 30 people in the last month.
Sure.
Lance, you mentioned there's prepare to stop signs going both directions on 400. Were those signs added recently? I say that only, I took a video going down 400, and there's like 4 or 5 light poles between where I start my video to the actual stop sign, and there's not prepare to stop signs there.
Don't quote me on this, but I believe on the east leg, which would be your westbound you're driving past Rockbridge, right? There had been one stop ahead sign from that direction, and then they had the paired stop signs on 875.
Well, there's 2 there now.
We have added the one on the south side, and we've added the stop ahead messaging to those. On the west leg or eastbound, I don't recall if there was a stop ahead there in the past, or whether we just added those 2. But yes, also some of those signs are fairly recent, particularly on that west leg.
Yeah, that's fair. And then the other question I have is the utility boxes that are there. I certainly understand, the line of sight north and south would be probably more clear from where the stop sign currently exists. And if we move it up to the road with those boxes there, it would impede your sight line, certainly to the south. Whose utility boxes are those? Is that the neighborhoods? Is that ours? Can those be moved?
I don't know whose they are. I don't know what utility they are. There's AT&T has a lot of presence there. I believe all the power is overhead in that area. So I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head who has that vault there. Anything's movable depending on who wants to pay for it. Utilities enjoy very liberal rights to be within our right of way. And that might be a situation or a condition that was teased out in a safety audit that said, hey, move these boxes, and then we can have a discussion on who's going to fund that. And you can throw it to the utility, you're creating a liability, and they may say it's been fine. So might have an answer to that come out of the safety study.
Okay.
We're all about painting utility boxes, paint a big ass truck coming at you on the side of that one.
That's funny.
Man, it might be a good reminder. Hey, there's something coming on the other side of this.
Lance, I feel like I've seen signs in other places. Maybe it's more in the county where especially when I'm driving somewhere where I don't really know what the intersection is, and I'll see something like all sides do not stop, or this through traffic does not have to stop. There's some other thing that tells me without trying to look, like, is this a 4-way? I can't really tell. I can see this. I'm trying to look. Is there a 4-way? Sometimes that tells me right away, this is not a 4-way stop. Is that a common sign? Is that something that
we have 4 of those signs up as you come to the intersection in east direction
that already say that?
That say cross traffic does not stop.
But to your point, it's not that people aren't stopping necessarily, even though Jason was there for 10 minutes and someone blew through it. But that's not the norm. It sounds like in the accident reports, people are stopping. So there's something about the stop and then the judgment of how to move through that's causing the accident.
Right. That's what it seems to me.
I mean, I'll bet it's 40 feet, maybe more, from the stop sign to the road, 40 or 50 feet.
Yeah, it's just hard to gauge.
Yeah.
I I think what we're hearing is everybody's pretty much in agreement that this study needs to happen. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely, the statistics in the study in 21 didn't really justify doing anything at that point, but I think we can there's obviously been an uptick in accidents. Now, whether that's a fluke this, spring, winter, who knows? But I think it justifies the study.
And again, I'll maybe close my comments because it sounds like we're wrapping up, but I shared with some of you some excerpts from the IMU TCD. And again, the number one sentence is four-way stop should only be considered upon completion of a traffic study. Okay, everything that it lists following that are hey, you might want to think about this, or is this going on? Some of those guidance, but that number one sentence is the one I will continuously remind you and me and us and everybody. We need to have a solid justification for both safety, efficiency, and liability.
So Lance, so this study we're talking about now is a safety study. Clear difference between safety study and a traffic study. So for purposes of making this type of decision, is it reasonable to assume we do a safety study now? Once we get the Oak Street completed, once we feel like there's not a manipulated additional traffic, then we do an actual traffic study to that intersection?
Yeah, I think, and I don't want to get hung up on nomenclature here. Really, this is a safety study, engineering study. The only thing it's lacking is capturing traffic volume data. It's going to be fully comprehensive in everything else.
Fair. Adam, do we need to do anything here or just tell Lance to?
This is like I said, this is within budget initially, unless we get hit with a few more of these opportunities. So we will get with both the county and make sure they don't have a problem with the selection of our town engineer BLN. Although they've done quite a bit of work for the county as well. But we'll talk with them about the preferred vendor. If they're okay with that, then we will just enter into a service agreement. The mayor will execute that, and we pull the trigger and go.
So we don't have to do anything.
No.
Great. Anything else for Lance?
Not for Lance, but thanks for the county for showing up for this meeting, coming all the way down here. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank to everybody. Lance, Denise, Nick, thank all of you for coming up here and being a part of this.
Yeah.
Sorry to step on your.
No, I mean,
Sorry about that.
safety's number one, right? We're all in favor of the study. If there's something else that needs to be done to cause any, that could help with any more notification before then, that might be good. We're sending people in an increased traffic pattern into something that we know is had been overly dangerous in the last few months. I think that's why we're all talking about it.
Up next on the agenda is other matters. Are there any other matters from counselors?
Yeah, I have just three quick little things. I didn't know whether to put them into town council update, but I think these are really other matters. Just wanted to give let everyone know that the Pathways Committee is working to recommend an updated and to update the Pathways Master Plan in addition to discussing the committee's own suggested pathways and extensions or locations. I'm asking the public to make suggestions. Please submit those suggestions for pathways to my email address at cmelton@zionsville-in.gov. I also want to bring up another little topic with regarding planning and zoning. Want to discuss briefly a noticeable disconnect I feel that I've noticed with an apartment zoning change this council made for a development in District 3. I wanted to take a closer look at that and see if there's a change in the process for zoning approval. So what's happened? Well, this body was given an initial plan along with the request for zoning change. That change looked great. The least amount of impact to the neighboring residential neighborhood was on that plan. However, at the final consideration of the approval of the planning commission phase, the developer found some issues with the plan presented to this body. It seems that this can happen regularly. I will continue having these conversations with the planning department to better understand how maybe the form-based code or other changes may impact this, and if we can look at enforcing commitments at the zoning change request phase or not. This is all in hopes that we don't run into issues like this. These major location changes for items like trash dumpsters being located near closer to existing residential homes, possibly creating noise, odor, and rodent issues. My goal is to minimize the major impactful changes from differing at the planning phase and at the planning commission approval phase. I do appreciate the current development group for attempting to alleviate the impact of this specific change to the neighboring residential development by including a berm, stone-like panel fence, trees, and relocating the dumpster further away from existing residential building, including a maintenance structure in between the two. So I suggest all interested parties attend this evening's public planning commission meeting for final comments by the staff. One last thing, I just want to also thank, after that last planning commission meeting, I want to thank the planning department and IT departments for making a small change of adding a document reader camera to the podium for the ability to have documents more publicly visible during the meetings, creating greater transparency during the presentations. A small addition to the podium over there is going to reduce the need for people to approach the diocese or the podiums during the meeting. So just a few little things on the other matters, but I think moving forward, I think it's beneficial to the town for transparency. Thank you.
All right, anything else from counselors?
Jason, just one quick commercial for Pizzazz as a member of that committee. We saw a presentation here, I think 3 or 4 months ago, of the tree of the year that was awarded and photographed and now at town hall, which is really kind of cool. Those applications and nominations are currently live through June 15th. You can find that on the Zionsville website. There's a way to type something up and submit a photograph. The only thing that we ask is that if it's not your personal, if it's on private property, that you get permission that you're taking a picture and submitting the nomination of someone's personal tree. But look forward to getting those and probably having another award ceremony here sometime late summer.
Does it count if they're in another state?
Yeah, I did post a really incredible picture of a tree from yesterday. But yes, it does have to be in the town limits of Zions.
Okay, great.
All right, anything else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
First by Counselor Garrett, second by Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Final notice will be posted in compliance with the Indiana Open Door Law.